Welcome back to the Accounting Working Group podcast. I'm your host, Stein Smith, and I am thrilled to be joined once again on the podcast with David Pope, who is an expert in everything crypto, blockchain, tokenized assets. I'm really happy to have him back here on the podcast. Dave, how's it going?
Very well, thank you very much. I appreciate the intro, Sean.
Absolutely, David. And obviously, as of our conversation right now, there has been a lot going on around crypto centralized operators, namely Coinbase and Binance being sued by the SEC. But I wanted to sort of peel our eyes off of all those headlines and to instead really try to examine and to have a more in-depth conversation on a few of the positive developments that are underway in the tokenized asset space. And by no surprise, Wyoming is once again out on the front edge of this whole conversation. And so I've asked David back on to add some context on some new bills and laws that have just recently been signed into law out in Wyoming, and to also just give us an update on some of the forthcoming activities that he and other policymakers out there are going to be doing. And so with that, David, toss it over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. A couple of announcements first. I am very happy and proud to announce that I have been named to the Wyoming Stable Token Commission, which we'll talk about that act in a couple of minutes, and the Wyoming Select Committee on Blockchain and Financial Innovation and Technology. So I'm very happy to have that happen, and both of those just happened within the last week. Yesterday, I took my oath for the Select Committee. I am one of three members of the Select Committee that are not legislators. The rest are legislators, and we are officially the governor's liaisons to that committee. So before I really go too much further, I have to include a disclaimer that none of what I say here is necessarily the opinion of either the Select Committee or the Stable Token Commission, and what it mostly consists of is my opinion, in my personal opinion.
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that being said, you talk about all sorts of interesting things going on in the world of digital assets, and you see a lot of states forming commissions and committees and subcommittees to look at regulating things like stable tokens. And so what Wyoming decided to do was go ahead and issue a stable token, because we saw a need for a state-backed token that always has 100% backing of U.S. Treasuries and is dollar denominated. And that's that's something that I personally have been advocating for 5 years. It wasn't
oh wow, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't the recent activity that spurred this, though. I think it pushed it over the edge with the legislature. But I broached this idea in a slightly different manner back in 2018, in my first term on the old blockchain task force in Wyoming, that Wyoming issue an actual virtual currency. And turns out, under Wyoming Constitution and the U.S. Constitution, a state can't have its own currency.
Okay.
So, and our Attorney General's office and the Legislative Services Office warned us that that would not be that a virtual currency would not pass muster. So over the years, the idea kind of morphed into into this stable token idea, because a token actually is a digital representation of something else. So that if it's a digital representation of the US dollar, then it is much more likely to pass constitutional muster, because we're not issuing our own currency. Senator Rothfuss was the one that put in Wyoming. He's a Wyoming senator out of Laramie, Wyoming. He put the finishing touches on this and actually came up with that particular idea and distinction. And in 2022, put forth legislation as an individual legislator. The legislation made it through both the House and the Senate in Wyoming, and then was vetoed by the governor. The governor had very valid concerns about it, in that he felt there wasn't enough work that had been done on the kind of the business model that would have to be have to adhere to in order to actually make the state money, which is one of the goals. The second, so that was 2022. Then in 2023, after having been worked through very diligently by the select committee, the legislation was resubmitted to the Wyoming legislature. It passed again, still overwhelmingly, and the governor allowed it to pass into law without either signing it or without without a veto. So it became law in March, or early April, I can't remember which. And so we now have a Wyoming stable token that will be created, or by the end of this year.
That's incredible progress, David. I mean, honestly, it's incredible to actually have worked through all of the, and I'm sure there was a lot of, politicking and wordsmithing and external research that had to be done in order to actually have this thing get drafted, get through committee, come up for votes, and then actually make it across the governor's desk. So that's a real feat right there.
Well, thank you. The select committee did its due diligence. They made significant changes, and now the governor has the directive to put it into place. It is still not 100% certain that the stable token will be created, because it still has to pass legal and regulatory muster. And that's the next step in this, is to work through those legal issues and make certain that there isn't a something that the federal government can challenge on it.
Was just going to ask about that, actually. Right, because obviously here in the U.S. we have federal government, state government, and then regional governments and all the rest. And I was going to ask, what are residents of Wyoming, assuming that everything goes according to plan and it passes legal, regulatory, what are owners of this token going to be able to do with it in terms of either controlling assets or engaging in other business transactions?
Okay, and this next part is entirely my opinion on this.
Okay.
Part of the accounting working group and a CPA, You and I both look at things slightly different than other people. I believe this is
Yes.
it's for good and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe eventually for this to succeed, it has to be viewed as a debt instrument from the state.
Okay.
A very peculiar debt instrument in that it pays no interest and offers no potential for gain, but a debt instrument nonetheless. And the act creates a trust in which every single dollar has to be used to in sales of these tokens has to be used to purchase U.S. treasuries, and that's what's going to back it. And the very carefully says that 102% at all times of the of the tokens that are in circulation have to be backed by treasuries. Moving beyond that, it will probably at times be more than that, and but never be less than that. And so the state itself, in issuing this token, is issuing a debt instrument because it will redeem on that micro $1 basis each of the tokens for $1. Now, when you look at that, it puts it into an entirely different light from an actual virtual currency, which even though the act, I think, uses the term virtual currency, I think for auditing purposes, the state that will have to be a debt, a form of debt instrument.
It's a very interesting take there, David, and I do think that that's just off the cuff here. And again, I'm only offering my own personal view here. That's a very interesting take that, on first glance, does look like a methodology to have this token pass over or pass through any sort of legal obstacles that could be raised and that have been raised in the past, right, for any sort of private sector currency like offerings. So that's really, really interesting. And I know that I'll be sure to keep an eye on the progress and any changes, and I'm sure you'll be first to post about any updates and headlines coming out around this project. And so to pivot our conversation, right, because I could talk on this topic about how it's going to be classified and treated as a state issued debt instrument for hours, but I won't do that to any listeners tuning in. But I do also want to pivot over to a few of your forthcoming roles and appointments, and if there is anything that is publicly able to be shared on some of the ideas or projects or conversations going on those committees or task forces that are going to hopefully build on the conversations happening around this Wyoming token.
Okay. Perfect. I think we can transition to that. On the token side, just to finish it up.
Sure.
By November 1st, I believe the Attorney General's office in Wyoming has to be able to present whether or not it believes that the token will pass legal muster. Then we will be exploring between now and then also the regulatory structure under which we will have to comply. And then your other question about who will be able to use this and how will they be able to use it? Again, my own personal opinion is that, at least initially, it won't be something widely circulated for retail consumption And for it, you won't be able to very soon go down to Starbucks and to buy your coffee. I foresee that it will mostly be used in international settlements and larger transactions internationally that would like to settle more quickly and more efficiently than the normal dollar uh, transactions. So anything beyond that, I think, will require time and study before any of that is put into place. I know there are groups in Wyoming advocating from the beginning that it be more of a retail type of use. I just don't know if that's possible yet.
Understood.
All right. So to the select committee, there, my role now as one of the governor's liaisons will kind of limit some of what I do, but prior to then, I'm going to have to find more about that. Like I said, I just took the oath. But prior to that, what I was advocating for was were two things really: personality for tokens, and I think that's an incredibly powerful concept. What if a token property, any kind of property, from automobiles to land to airplanes, and then those assets be traded just electronically via the token. Great concept, fun concept, and I'm hoping that the legislature will hear me out on that, or the select committee will hear me out on that this year. The other one is a unified state blockchain for real estate holdings. And then the actual tokenization of title to real estate on the blockchain. So Wyoming is one of, I think, a lot of states that has county repositories for all real estate transactions and title purposes. So each county has its own database of purchases, sales, and title in real estate. And my idea is to create a central blockchain in which each of the counties would be a node on the blockchain and have access to it, and then apply the each transaction going forward to that blockchain, and then be able to tokenize the purchases and sales, so that we begin to truly develop this history on the blockchain and have transactions be settled on the blockchain, and eventually eliminate the legacy system.
It's an ambitious goal for sure. I love it, but that's an ambitious goal for sure.
It's very ambitious, but I believe we have to start somewhere.
Absolutely right. And so to piggyback on, has there been, or are you able to add any commentary on, sort of the feedback or the conversations that have been going on with the business community out in Wyoming? Are they, super interested, moderately interested, or, what's the general mood?
In my ideas, or in the whole concept of digital assets?
Probably the whole concept of trying to sort of formalize, and I don't want to say legalize, but to integrate, tokenized assets and blockchain into everyday commercial business.
Well, I'll start with, there's been some pushback from the community banks in Wyoming, and rightly so. Community banks are under fire from a lot of different directions.
Mhm.
There's a push to consolidation with larger regional and national banks, and so they're very concerned with the stable token and the Speedy Bank systems that Wyoming created, that those are going to push them, um, maybe not out of existence, but apply further pressure to them. And I'm very cognizant of that, of their feelings on that. And so we, as we move forward, we will be, at least I will be, recognizing that and making sure that their fears are addressed. The wider business community in Wyoming is much like the wider business community across the United States. We may have a little more recognition of some of the digital asset and blockchain concepts, but not much more on that scale. More and more individuals are becoming aware of cryptocurrency, and some want to take the risks and buy in and invest in those products, and some want to stay far away from it. They're on the central bank digital currency side in Wyoming. That idea is soundly rejected. Individuals in Wyoming are very much a libertarian type of crowd, and any thought that the government can have excessive intrusion into their lives or monitoring of their lives that's just not something that they want.
Mhm.
Hope that answered part of your question.
Yes, it did. No, absolutely. And so, it honestly does highlight the importance, I think, of, any effort, right? Be it at the federal level, hopefully at some point, or at the individual state level, to one, you focus on working with the policymakers to engage in those more technical conversations, and to also, have an ear to the interests and the concerns of the businesses and the entrepreneurs who are going to be impacted by it. So yes, I would say that yes, that the answer makes absolute sense to me, and that I do always have to point out now that 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 even though most people here on the East Coast have watched Yellowstone, that actually that show is not 100% accurate of the everyday life in Wyoming, David, correct?
It is not. Uh, it I find it an interesting show, and certainly when you look at the characters of Yellowstone, and if you look at the characters, I watched uh, another show. I think it's called Outer Range,
Hmm.
which is another, right, one of the streaming services. You can find personalities in those shows that mirror people that you know in Wyoming, and it's interesting when you do that. But on a broader basis, Wyoming is a bit different from the theatrical Wyoming that you see. However,
Absolutely.
there is a space in Wyoming, and well, it's just outside of Wyoming. It's just outside of Idaho, and it only exists in Yellowstone itself, where it is theoretically possible to commit murder and not be prosecuted for it,
Uh,
because it's only federal land, and there is no federal law against murder.
well,
That
see,
that is the theory.
yeah,
And I am not advocating testing the theory.
absolutely not. Everybody come to the Accounting Working Group podcast, talk some crypto, talk some TV, talk some possible criminal activity. No, but No, but yeah, as somebody who's born and bred in the great state of New Jersey, I totally get it. Everyone watches the Sopranos and Jersey Shore, and while there are elements of truth, that is not how we all actually are.
Right.
But
Exactly.
yes, but again, David, it was a blast having you on. There's so much going on in Wyoming, and I'm always really happy to have you on the podcast to really give us some of that inside baseball, and to always do so in a balanced and objective manner.
Well, thank you. I certainly
Absolutely.
appreciate the opportunity to be on here. And just visiting and catching up with you is always a pleasure.
Thank you very much, David, and I'm sure I'll have you on again during 2023, and hopefully I can make my way out there over the next few months and actually catch up with you in person.
Well, and on the spot here, will you speak again at the hackathon?
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
I'm looking forward to it then.
All right, David. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care, Sean.
Take care.